Valanciunas to already be declared out for the rest of the series with an ankle sprain. I mean, it's obviously pretty bad. I mean, is it wrong to think that if they are to advance, that the next series is not possible either?
It's interesting because when a team says, player X is out for the rest of this series, by definition, you don't know how long a series is going to last. So they're obviously at least charting out through what would be a potential Game 7, which is many, many days away. Mm-hmm. Maybe not that many days away, 5, 6 days away.
Yep.
And so there's your minimum, right? It was interesting that they didn't say they didn't give it in terms of days or weeks or when the reevaluation would be. But the impression I get is, I don't know that this guy's available for the conference finals either.
Yeah.
It sounds, I don't know. To me, it sounds very unpromising.
Yeah.
But you also don't know how a guy's going to recover. And, teams these days, I feel like most of them are hiding behind medical privacy laws, to be honest. A lot of them give as little information as possible. I think Toronto gave very little information in this case. Miami gave very little information on Whiteside. They didn't say the degree of his sprain. They called him day-to-day, which is the lamest injury reporting, line that anybody can possibly give. You always know more than just day-to-day. It's very rare that you don't know whether he's available beyond that. So, especially when this is a serious injury, spraining a knee is not a small thing. That's what Curry has.
Yeah, exactly.
And as we know, he's been out for a couple of weeks already. So, I feel like they're both, withholding quite a bit. But I think it's reasonable to think that whoever advances was probably without their starting center when they start against the Cavaliers, and then it's a question of do they come back at some point during the conference finals.
Yeah, I guess it also matters. The question that follows that is, does it even matter with the way that the Cleveland Cavaliers are playing? I mean, we doubted them a lot throughout the regular season. Chemistry issues, is this going to work, et cetera, et cetera. But it looks like now they're as unbeatable as any team in the NBA right now.
They look that way, but they haven't really been pressed either, and this is not to diminish what they've done so far. When you're a dominant team, you sometimes make everybody look diminished. But look, they beat up on a Pistons team that got in the playoffs for the first time in, 50 years or whatever it's been. The Pistons were an 8th seed. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do.
Yep.
The Hawks were very good, very solid this year, but they weren't even as good as they were a year ago when the Cavs beat them in the playoffs. And that was a pretty battered Hawks team last year, but that was a better Hawks team, at least when they were at full strength. This team didn't have a DeMarre Carroll to throw it at LeBron. I think just overall, they weren't as fierce an opponent this year. They weren't just in general throughout the season. So, the best teams are in the West. That's been the case for some time now. That's not a secret. And it's not degrading anything the Cavaliers have done to say that they haven't had to face a team like the Warriors or Spurs or Thunder yet, because they haven't. And that won't happen until the finals, because whoever they're meeting in the Eastern Conference Finals, even if the Heat and Raptors were at full strength, those teams still aren't anywhere near the level of those Western Conference powers. And if they're at less than full strength, which it looks like they will be, it should be, close to a cakewalk for the Cavaliers. All that said, the Cavaliers are playing great. Their chemistry looks better than it's ever been with this group. And, they're moving the ball. They're playing ferocious defense. They're rebounding. They're hustling. I mean, there's nothing you could complain about with the Cavaliers right now. But every good team, the true test of all those things is how do they do under duress. And they haven't had to face a lot of that so far.
They haven't had to face any of it. I mean, really, if you look at it literally in terms of just sweeping through. It's Howard Beck with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio. Howard's with Bleacher Report. There's a lot of jobs open right now. Memphis, we know about the Kings gig, the Rockets, the Pacers, the Knicks, if you believe that Phil's going to actually engage in a real full coaching pursuit or process here. What do you see shaking out? I mean, that's a lot of teams to sort through here, but give us your best shot. Who winds up where?
Well, all indications are that Dave Yeager is going to end up in Sacramento, and that's where he wanted to be, and that's why he was fired by the Grizzlies anyway was because he was angling for that job, and they finally said, look, if you want to go. So that one looks like there's a lot of momentum toward that being the one of the marriages anyway, is Jaeger and the Kings. The rest of them, I don't know. I'm not about to start guessing. I mean, it certainly looks like the Knicks are going to stick with Kurt Rambis. Something else could happen, but I think that's where all the indications are at the moment. The Rockets are interviewing a ton of people. The Pacers and Grizzlies just now vacated those jobs. I think it's tough to peg right now.
Do you think Larry Bird lost some points in the cred department the other day? I thought a good chunk of that press conference was really unfair and pretty embarrassing, to be honest with you.
It was strange. Larry Bird's a unique individual, and he's got his convictions. And I had Rick Carlisle on my radio show yesterday chatting a little bit about the coaching situation league-wide. And, he talked about that situation in particular because obviously, Carlisle was on Larry's staff when Larry Bird became head coach in Indiana, and Carlisle was his one of his coordinators. I'm trying to remember. I think he was defensive coordinator. Maybe it was offense. But so Carlisle is close with Larry Bird, obviously, and he's also close with Frank Vogel. And so personally, I think it was difficult for him to kind of, just assess that whole situation. But his feeling is, look, Larry's not lying when he says the 3-year thing. Like Larry said it to Rick Carlisle and Dick Harter and the rest of that staff with Indiana, 16 years ago. Actually, it was more than that. But he said to them, basically, look, guys, I'm going to do this for 3 years because I think that after 3 years, a coach can get stale. So I guess you can appreciate his consistency or his conviction that he's got this philosophy. On the other hand, everybody league-wide would agree Frank Vogel did a phenomenal job with that team. It didn't make a lot of sense on that level, and he disclosed probably a little too much when he says that Frank Vogel spent a half hour on the phone with him trying to talk him out of firing him.
Yeah.
Because that puts Vogel. I think it puts Vogel in a bad light. I mean,
well, it's not a good
any
one.
of us,
Makes
if you got a job you love.
Yeah.
I think we would all probably have that conversation. In some respects, I find it endearing that a professional coach is not so egotistical or proud that he wouldn't make the case. I think it speaks well of him that he did try to make the case. But that said, those are the kinds of things you don't normally disclose.